Omelchenko, director of the ATLANT Support Center. Good afternoon, Andrii. Good afternoon. We know that you launched such a powerful project that now operates in a number of cities. Can you say a few words about that? Who could reach out to you and get help from you? Good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. We started working starting from Maidan from 2014. And then anti-terroristic operation, help to the veterans, and in Ukrainian house I launched training for the specialists and volunteers who would like to understand military subject more, the specificity of work specifically with the military. And starting with the full-scale invasion, we created the psychological support center ATLANT, and it's specialized in preparation of the mobile groups in all the cities of Ukraine, because unlike during the times of anti-terroristic operation, there's a large number of people, and even notwithstanding the situation is better in terms of support from the society. I mean, everybody now supports the military. We need more specialists like those. And we have our operation in 6 cities: Kyiv, Odessa, Lviv, Rivne, Sumy, Chernivtsi, and we have a team working in Great Britain who works with the relocated people mostly. And now the times are a little bit different and their approach changes respectively. So if working with the anti-terroristic operation veterans, we used the United States protocols. So that was the work aimed at returning the combatants back to the peace life. So now we work in between rotations. We don't have a task of returning the servicemen to the civil life. We have to retain them on the battlefield, so they change their system of values, which starts pivoting around survival. For the military, I call it as the arms that they use, the weapons they use. So they need to clean their weapons and to oil it. So it's the same that we do to the nervous system. So the guys, they have improvement in their cognitive characteristics, they feel better, and with the help of our specialists they get rid of anxious thoughts, panic attacks, and they fulfill their duties better after that. And we plan rehabilitation after our victory, so those teams that work now as the mobile teams, they will be the centers for rehabilitation after the victory. Andrii, you're doing the most powerful, you're paying more attention like working behind the front lines, or do you go to the front lines helping our military there? Yes, right. We were at the forward edge of the battle area recently in Luhansk region. We worked with our guys. We traveled there. Now the team from Odessa, I completed the training recently for them, and now this Odessa team is preparing to work with the southern part. Yes, we make travels to the forward edge and we work there. So this is the way we have to do it now. We have to visit the guys. How long does it usually take, and is it possible to do it? We understand that we're in wartime and our military are at the front lines. Is it possible to do it within some short period, limited period? Well, there is a lot of moving parts, and I explained it specifically when psychiatrists visit me, the civil psychiatrists, and they have to reorient themselves because the usual methods and techniques don't work even at the first step when they establish communication. The first and foremost is communication and the trust. The trust you have to get from the military. When you have this trust, the technical part is even more simple than with the civils. There is a straight algorithm of work, but how you have to approach it's even a lot more complicated than for the civil psychiatrist or psychotherapist, because the guys usually don't want to be worked with, even no matter that they need it a lot. They lose sleep, they have flashbacks, they have special conditions, but they keep saying they're doing all right. But when we get their trust, they start speaking out, telling everything they went through, and this is the way we work with them. So we take them in work, and the results are magnificent because they get rid of the panic attacks. I worked with the guys who had suicidal thoughts. They were going to be decommissioned, but now they're back in the ranks. They're back to the battlefield, and they get rid of all those negative consequences. And we actually can train everybody to do it. How many people do you already have trained, and how many servicemen already received help like that? I want to start with one thought, because I have many questions to me, because we train both specialists and volunteers, and we are being asked how could you train somebody who is tangential to psychology. David Brown is the professor from the United States who proved the use of volunteers, specifically in work with volunteers, with the military. And he made this work for Ukraine specifically. There is an online course for our specialists from the Institute of Bohomolets, and I have 2 blogs in that course they implemented. And the first training by David Brown is the application of volunteers. Those courses are established in 6 cities of Ukraine, so we trained about 300 specialists and volunteers together. And we had a lot of consultation, hundreds of travels by the mobile teams. All of them work, and the task is to have every team work in their region to cover the needs of the military units located in that region, including hospitals and internally relocated people who are currently at the region. So this is how it works. According to your experience, how necessary is this help, specifically at the forward edge? Unfortunately, statistics, I will tell you the truth. When the war started, I was working during anti-terroristic operation, but the statistics kept coming and it was not calming. I was talking to a forensic specialist in Zolotonosha who accepted the guys, and he said like one forensic specialist had like 1 or 2 suicides per day, so we can multiply it and we understand the whole picture. And it can sound horrible, but it's quite good statistics, because the situation is better than during anti-terroristic operations. Still, the need is there is a large, very big need in these services. So 5 years after the end of the war, more people die in the society than during the war itself, 5 times more. So it's the statistics of any war. And our goal, our mission is to change these statistics. And I'm convinced that with the support of the society, the way it works now in Ukraine, we will have this situation way better than it was in other countries after other wars. And we understand that when we overpay the price for our freedom and liberty, we want, when it all ends, we want to bring back the borders and bring back people to normal civil life, to bring them back to normal life, to keep their families together, to have people work and rebuild the country. So it's a huge piece of work. So we have to get rid of PTSD, to get them rid of all those memories and dreams, nightmares. So we have to get rid of those consequences to provide growth to the country. But now during the war, We have to work with the guys to improve their condition, to get them rid of the mistakes, don't have them go under bullets, to get them rid of the panic attacks. And talking about the majority who say they're all right, we want to get them rid of the condition that they go through physically, and it can be done by just plain psychology and communication. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions, Ale Shershень, Ukrinform. Andrii, can you describe the techniques your center currently uses for preparation of the mobile teams, and who's the trainer? We use the protocols of the United States, starting from the beginning of ATO, and it's the protocols for PTSD. Also, we use British protocols developed by Neil Greenberg for short briefings, and specifically the fundamentals of his work were to use the resources which help to overcome the stress, and he classified the stress factors that influence the deterioration of the conditions. So there is a swing, we increase the resources and decrease the stress factors. If person has enough resources and we decrease the stress factor to the maximum, the person will overcome all these conditions by themselves. So it's United States and Great Britain protocols. Neil Greenberg has his techniques working in the British Army, and I was the first in Ukraine to start trainings for our specialists based on the British protocols. Now it went further, and I passed it on to have it trained in our army. So do you train everybody by themselves? Yeah, it's mostly me. In future we will prepare more instructors. I keep training, I create the mobile teams, and I supervise. I mean, all the trainings, all the studies happen personally. I come to the military units, and then when the mobile teams leaves for a travel, we do it online. I check all the specialists to make sure they're in the good conditions. So just in case, I cover their back. If they identify any condition with certain servicemen, I can cover them to continue their work, to complete their work, so there are no consequences. What's the procedure for training of one mobile team? So they have a basic training, it's 4 days. It allows to work in between rotations, to communicate, to help the guys to speak out, and to work specifically through some points. If we talk about like full-fledged rehabilitation, that's something that will happen further on. I will train the groups who will do the rehabilitation, so it will be plus 10 days, so 14 full days is the training for the specialists who can take care of rehabilitation. Do I understand it correct that you train the volunteers within 14 days? How efficient is such training? I will tell you. So in part it's the training itself, but a large fraction of training is the supervision, which happens regularly. We work with the teams on a regular basis. For example, they left and today they come back. So in the unit they have these and those situations or issues, so they already have the tools, but I have to respond how to use those tools in a better manner. I instruct them how to work better in that situation, because situations are different. Every unit is a different story. For example, sometimes we come across something new and we invent the way how to work with certain case. But this approach already proved its efficiency. With proper supervision, all those teams, they operate efficiently. You already prepared 300 such volunteers. Is it enough, or the training will be continued? Well, we will still plan the training. When I come, for example, to a city, I need to have at least one person to take responsibility as the coordinator for the city, who organizes the premises, the trainings, and who will further coordinate with me, for example, the online training and supervision. If there is interest somewhere, I come to that city and I do the training there. In Kyiv, we already had 3 trainings. We had more than 80 participants coming from different centers, all the famous rehabilitation centers. They came to our training and asked to have this training with them. A lot of specialists, psychiatrists, psychotherapists come for military subject. They are good specialists in their field. They work well with PTSD, but they don't have enough understanding of the military specifics, and this is what they come for. Moreover, it's not the only thing I do. I implement the training for stress resistance for the military, for their preparation for the combat. We have trainings for the families of those perished. It's more like therapeutical groups, and for the families of the military as well. Those are mostly webinars for communication, how to give them the understanding of the military subject, how to communicate with the guys who come back from the front lines, to keep their families in good conditions, so that the guys receive some support from their families. Can you please describe how the volunteers provide help to the military? I mean, the way it happens, they come or they live in the front lines. Yes, the mobile teams, they travel, but now I have military medics coming to our trainings and deputy commanders on morale and psychological help, so they will implement it in their units directly. And besides, I receive requests for mobilization of my trainees, so that I advise on the number of psychologists that I prepared. Some military units already ask those people to be recommended for their units, and they have interviews with them. They pick from the number of my trainees, and they are being added to the staff of the unit. And the mobile teams, yes, they just travel in case of necessity upon proper coordination with the command, with the medics and deputies and morale as a psychological support. And the last question, how is your project funded and how will it operate? Just until the victory, it will work in the format as it is now, and after the victory, we will work on rehabilitation. And now we work in terms of financing on a volunteer basis. Volunteers, they do their job somehow, they make money, but when they have free time, they do these travels. And if we have to go to a unit, the coordinator says, we are being expected to arrive on this or that date, and whoever responds, like, I'm ready to go on that date, so the team travels. Somebody goes to the hospital and somebody goes to the military unit. Sometimes the volunteers supply something, and at the same time, we provide this psychological help at the military unit, for example. And as to the funding, as I mentioned, we just crowdfund something. We fuel the car, buy some footwear for the guys, and at the same time, we work with the guys. But I want to emphasize that it would be good to have funding for, at least for the backbone, to have the people work in a more efficient manner. It would help to work in a more efficient manner, and the closer we come to the victory, the more there is a need in premises in the cities, and to have people work on sites. but now we work on a volunteer basis. It would obviously be easier to work with funding, but it's our country. We will keep on working anyway. Andrii, thank you very much for this conversation. Dear friends, do you have any more questions? No more questions. Thank you for the work you're doing. I will remind you, we had Andrii Omelchenko with us, the director of the Center for Psychological Help.
Obviously, the military and the government and the state and the whole country is pouring all of its resources into the actual fighting. Is it fair to say that that basically from the state side, from the military side, from the government side, they've not really been able to keep up with the scale of this problem of PTSD amongst troops, and that's why groups like yourself, the volunteers, and everybody are sort of stepping into this vacuum? Is that a good characterization, you think?
Українською,
Добре. Є прикладач.
Да.
Well, really, it's all true. All the costs are now directed to the war and to the support of the armed forces. And that's why the issue of psychological support, for example, if the issue of financial support is being solved, nobody still talks about the psychology. But first of all, I understand that statistics and the condition of the servicemen, I understand what's going on. I'll tell you one thing. For example, tomorrow I will have a webinar for stress control, and I will tell about the so-called Gauss curve, which shows that a minor percentage gets PTSD absolutely for sure, and some part of them get it after the war, and another part is vacillating. The major part is vacillating, and it depends on the psychologists, the volunteers, to the large extent, what will happen to this majority, which is vacillating. And there's a number of guys who just come to them after they went through something, when they get things added up. For example, you can use the gun for a lot of times without cleaning it, but it gets jammed at some point, and this is the same what happens to the nervous system. I worked with a guy who is commander of a unit who is at war since 2019, and at certain point, no one knows how, he started having panic attacks. We worked through them, and that's it. The work of a specialist is enough. The work of a specialist who knows what to do, and you mentioned it very correct. Everything is thrown, all the efforts are thrown at the victory, at the weapons, but less people talk about the psychological aspect. But I already mentioned the statistics, and something that we're facing now. I want to emphasize that side, that after the war, all those consequences, PTSD and everything they went through, it all then flows into the country in its entirety. I see our mission as something that we have to be done, and we actually can do that. But as I mentioned, we need 2,000 specialists to work, and that would be the sufficient number to cover the needs of our army. If they would work, everything could be overcome, and we would not have consequences like that, but it depends on work like that. That's why we do it. Thank you, Andrii. Thank you, dear colleagues, and I will remind you, right now our team is preparing the schedule of briefings for tomorrow. Please follow our announcements. We believe in our armed forces, and let's continue working for our victory. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.